Rabbi, welcome once again. Stop, don't turn off the radio. As a matter of fact, listen, it's a mitzvah gedolah to listen a whole day and a whole night, 24/6, to replays and podcasts and everything else of all of Zev Brenner's wonderful network. But as Reverend Jesse Jackson says, however, which in English means however, is 1 hour. Of course, that's all speaking if you don't want to sit and learn Torah or do chesed or be riding around Thursday night delivering packages for Tamchei Shabbos or anything else. But there's 1 hour, Rabbi say. All we're asking you is 1 hour. This is Yehuda 11. The program is 11 at 11, heard each and every Thursday evening, Leil Shishi, from 11 p.m. to midnight. We're saying to you, give us 1 hour and we will give you more hashkafa, more information, more insight than you'll get in a whole year of Agudah Shmuzin and conventions, and throw in the OU and the RCA and Satmar and Bobov and Lubavitch just for good measure. What you hear here, you won't hear anything else anywhere else. Rabbi Sai, please, if you have a heter for the internet, and everybody has a heter for the internet now because there's a Torah Chadasha, a new covenant, that started when Agudah decided that they're going on the internet and they're tweeting and they're schmeeding and they're tweeting and they're chanfening and every lecking and kissing up. So I've had gewusst, there's a heter for the internet. There's a heter, there's an internet for kissing up and tweeting for the Chanif L'Rishayim, for all the politicians who are sponsoring the very bills that are killing us and killing our community. Then Allah has kal v'chomer, ben b'nei shel kal v'chomer, a priori, as they say in Latin. You can definitely listen to this program. Rabbi say this is a radio program which had a sort of a bit of a haskama, if you will, from Rav Avigdor Miller, my Rebbe. It was the better part of 35 years ago when Rav Miller summoned me and told me, the Rebbetzin told me that you were on the radio and I listened and you were very good. What was that all about? I believe that that was all about that Rav Miller had a sense of responsibility, and the same way he sent me to speak to the Pope, he sent me to run for mayor, to run for Congress, to speak in Washington, to do different things. He sent me and he encouraged me when I presented him with these opportunities. He did want to know about my abilities and capabilities, and therefore he listened to the radio. So I did have a sort of haskama. And now Rabbi says it's a third of a century later, and many of you people might be listening for the first or the second time, because this was the biggest secret on Jewish radio, because from 10 to 11 on Sunday evenings, Talkline Communications Jewish programming was ending at 10 o'clock, and there was a Christian program, so everybody was tuning out. So my audience was relatively small. But now, Yiskadel v'Yiskadesh, Shemei Rabbah, everything is growing big, and we can make a much bigger Kiddush Hashem. And you can be part of that. If you're annoyed, if you're frustrated, if you're broken, if you're concerned, or if you're becoming educated to be any of the above emotions because of the hurtling down to Sodom and Gomorrah, and you're saying, but what can we do? Was kann ich tun? I have to support a family. I have my Siddharim. I have to learn. Or if you're basically chamordik, meaning you're a little bit like a chamor, like Michael, you're saying, it's politics. It's very interesting because I thought that the Torah addresses everything, even what shoelace you should tie first, your left or your right. And now I'm hearing that there's something the Torah doesn't address. If it's politics, the Torah doesn't address it. That's why Simcha, the Ziditcheva, Eichenstein says, when we ask him to speak out as the new assemblyman against Ritzicha abortion or against the Mishkav Zach agenda, he says, this is the job of the Rabbunim, but it's not the job of the Rabbunim. We were all commanded on Sinai, and every Jew, so you say, but Levin, what can we do? Well, one of the things you can do is you can support this radio program. It costs me a couple of $100 a week. And you can come on my chat, take a pen and write down my chat number, my WhatsApp, 718-469-6999, or you can contact me at rabbilevin@gmail.com, rabbilevin@gmail.com, and you can actually donate money for a radio program. 100%, not a penny for me. I don't make any money. It should go straight to pay for the radio program. By doing that, you have an insurance policy for your children, your grandchildren, that they should have an extra shmira from all the vicissitudes of immorality that are buffeting our community. That's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is you could write letters to the editors in the Haredi papers that don't do enough of a job covering things, to the secular papers. If you listen to talk radio, you can call up. If you're a well-spoken, articulate Jew or Jewess, and you can speak up for morality, there's so many things you can do. You can make telephone calls to Agudas Yisrael when they're not doing their job and complain. If they get enough phone calls, they'll start to do stuff. What you can do a dozen things. But at least the smallest thing you can do is to tell your friends, your neighbors, you can even tell your enemies, okay, your mishpacha, and they don't have to live in New York, because there's a hotline number that they could hear it worldwide. If they're learning in Eretz Yisrael and they want to take off an hour, they can get it on our archive. They can get it anytime they want. He asked me, what is the number? So take a pen in hand again. They can get it in the on the hotline number. What's the hotline number? 641-715-3900. Again, 641-715-3900. So let's say they live in Lakewood. Let's say they're in Chicago, in Baltimore, wherever they are, in Mexico. They can get this information. They can get a chizik. It could change their perspective and the way they look at things. All they have to do is call the hotline, 641-715-3900. But that's not enough. Then you have to put in, unfortunately, you have to put in a code. The code is 247656. Again, 247656. By spreading this information to people in your social media orbit, or by coming onto our chat, our WhatsApp, which you can get by sending me an email or sending me a text or WhatsApping me to put you onto our chat at 718-469-6999. You could become educated. You can get daily information. We can't possibly power pack everything into this 1 hour program. The most controversial, provocative, important, ruchniistic, hashkafic program that you will ever find on Jewish radio. Bishvili nivra ha'olam, a person's obligated to say, because of me the world was created. Because one person could slant the whole olam l'kav zchus. We have to look at it as if the world is mechsal, 50-50. Poco. And the only way we can survive is if we tip it l'kav zchus, we can tip the scales. A person is cosmic in his influence. When you shake the leaves, the very end of a long tree, of a large tree, and you grab onto some leaves at the very end, you shake that branch, and that branch, if you shake it hard enough, can shake the whole tree. It's the same thing in Ruchnis. When the Yid does something, he impacts on Kol Olam Kulei. My rabbi says he can do a lot. Support this radio program, please. You can do it Le'ilui Nishmas, L'zecha Nishmas. You can do it as a refuah shalema. You can do it as a chus for your children for Kiddush V'Tara. My rabbi said, we have a lot of stuff to do tonight. But I didn't think I would ever do this, but I want to do this because it's important. I was very touched. It's kamat, you can cry. Rabbi said, there are so many people who we see suffering in this world in a profound way. And the Chachma Bagoyin Taimin, there's a Goyish singer, Billy Joel, and in the 1970s or thereabouts, he sang something called Only the Good Die Young. And he was Chachma Bagoyin Taimin, he was saying a shtickle of profundity, that the people who seem to die young, who suffer the most, many times are the Erlich people. So I just read something on Yeshiva World News. I would not promote Yeshiva World News per se, because although they're a source of information, I have big hashkafic problems with some of the things they say and do, which I occasionally point out. Nevertheless, I saw an article there about helping Arla Aster, I think his name is. A terrible Maisa, a Rebbe at 34 years old, in the Mesivta Monsey, or the Yeshiva Monsey, who got septic shock, and this very day, today, when this is aired, Thursday evening, I think he will have already gone through amputations, and they have to raise something like $2 million because it's $200,000 plus for each limb, his legs and his hands. He's a child of parents, a young wife, and 2 young children. Rabbi Saik, it's 100% that this gentleman, this tzaddik, this person who's, you have to read the article, it's so touching. He's definitely suffering for us. So the least we can do is donate money for his therapy, for his refuah shalema, and we can have schusim. So please, go to Yeshiva World. It was on February 27th. Look up this story about Arla Oster, and do your best. I'd also like to say this is for refuah shalema for the following. There's a local takeout store in Flatbush, and I walked in, and this Sephardic gentleman, David, who I know for many years, was serving me, and in the middle, he bursts out and he tells me, I have the machla, and it's in a certain area, and he's not even sure. He's going to one of the biggest cancer hospitals. Should have a refuah shalema, David ben Chana refuah shalema, as well as Imi Morasi, Masha Basmatl, Etel Basmatl, Avram ben Chai Rezel, and your humble servant, the host of this program, Yehuda ben Masha. Moirav Rabbi Sai. We have a lot of things to discuss. We're going to go to the Jewish Press of last week. The Jewish Press of last week has an article, Royal Wine Corp's Annual Wine and Food Experience. Yeah, there were different pshatim in Mishenichnas Adam Mam L'Simcha. So Kedem Wine holds that it's a mitzvah to zalf wine. We got a zalf wine, and we got to have all kinds of wines, sweet ones and dry ones, and Semillon, Bordeaux, and Chardonnays, and from France, and from Switzerland, and from upstate New York, and all over the world. We got to make a tunnel about it. And we have to eat it with cheese, wine and cheese, just the Greeks did when Hellfurnace was fed cheese, so he got thirsty, and then he had wine, the original wine and cheese party, and then, of course, Yehuda's cut off his head, and that's one of the reasons we celebrate Hanukkah and we eat milchiks. So, a ganz Jahr Freilich, a ganz Jahr Purim and Hanukkah with wine. So the Royal Wine Company of Kedem, they're having a food experience event in Chelsea Piers featuring a sampling of hundreds of kosher wines and spirits from around the world. Some 2,000 people attended. They rushed their way through dozens of delicacies from some of New York's top caterers, while the daytime event was attended by members of the food and beverage trade who came from around the nation to check out the latest liquor stores and catering establishments and kosher and Pesach hotels. The Baron, wherever he is in Jena Welt, is having such nachas and kvelling, because that's what we need, Epicureanism, Fresserei, Zeiferei. Later, we'll see as it gets closer to Purim, Rabbi Dr. Abraham Tversky will put out another video about we have to stop giving wine, we have to stop giving liquors, and Purim shouldn't be about zalfing, and we have to stop the Kiddush clubs. But meanwhile, full steam ahead. I wonder if we'd open the books of Kedem wine. You know, when the cigarette companies, like Marlboro, Winston, all these companies, you know, they also give a fortune of money for tzedakahs, for philanthropy, as if somehow that's matter to them that they're giving cancer sticks. And now they're going into the other business of those machines that are supposed to stop you from smoking, but they're also quasi-addictive because they have nicotine. They're going into that also. So at least Kedem wine should be like the other ones that bring addictions to people, the secular ones, the cigarettes, or Johnny Walker Red and this and that. They also give fortunes of money to philanthropy. I wish that Kedem would open up their books and show us they're getting money from all of Klal Yisrael, and they're very stark to knock out other people who want to go into the wine business. How much money do they give? What percentage of money from those bottles of wine or those bottles of liquor that cost $50, $70? It's a big chashivas if you have a wine cellar down. They'll tell you how to build your wine cellar. And they'll, yeah. So how much should I give to tzedakah? Just a question, just a horror. I love Kedem very much. But I tell you the old story that in Yerushalayim, they came to Rabbi Chaim Sonnenfeld in the heart of the Depression. The guy needed money. He said, Rebbe, I'm going to make one tzikkel, a sucking candy. If you give a hersha, everybody will buy it, and I'll have panasa. Rabbi Chaim Sonnenfeld had Rachmanis. He gave a hersha. A year later, he comes. We have a cherry one. I want to make an orange one now. The people should have variety. They should have a choice. Said Rabbi Chaim Sonnenfeld, ein tzikkel is genug. In other words, let's not pig out. When I was growing up, not that many years ago, in the 60s, Then the 70s, the 80s, you didn't walk into those supermarkets, those gourmet supermarkets, and see aisles and aisles with every kind of such. Unfortunately, I'm addicted also. I have a sweet tooth. I'm addicted. Is it good for us? It's terrible for us. So that's point number one. We wanted to get to that from last week. Let's move right along. Let's move right along in the Jewish press. Here's an article that gives me a chance to sing the praises of Rabbi Stephen Prozanski, a modern Orthodox rabbi in Teaneck, New Jersey. But in many moral issues, he's a right-winger. And there's a whole Maisa that in one of the synagogues in Teaneck, they're training in a Rabbi Helfgott, Rabbi Nisanel Helfgott, is decision to hire a female clergy in training. In other words, to break down more preachers together. So this is what Rabbi Stephen Prozanski writes. And I thank the Jewish press last week, CISA, for putting this in. No one wants a regulation a resignation of any rabbis from the RCBC and a rabbinical council. And I, speaking for many of Bergen County, urge my colleagues in the shul to respect the will of the majority and remain part of our greater community. But if a colleague decides to remove the mechitza in the synagogue, few would question the necessity for him to resign from the Rabbinical Council of Bergen County. Female clergy is the mechitza of our generation. It is critical that we elucidate to our community that lo zu haderech. This is not the proper way. Undermining the Masorah has never kept Jews in the fold. All good intentions to the contrary, notwithstanding. God bless Dean Prozanski. Do I hold from Rabbi Prozanski in so many ways? He speaks about co-ed dormitories and sending your kids to college. He does so much good. There's one thing, he supports that crazy organization, ORA, that YU-based organization of Amaratzim, that try to force people to give gets, shalei kahalacha, etc., etc. And on that, he needs to be educated, and maybe he has been. But in so many things, he's very, very good. Let's look at this week's Jewish press. Here's a letter to the editor. The Jewish press published from Rabbi Dr. Bernard Rosenberg, who also in Edison, New Jersey, maybe he's retired. It was also a Chashuv Asiyeh Rav. He writes, it's time to leave the Democratic Party. Why? Because the anti-Semitism is being embraced more and more by Democrats. And we are partially responsible for indirectly legitimizing this hatred. I ask you to join me and support Exodus Now. He started a new organization, Exodus Now, to get away from the Democratic Party. This modern Orthodox rabbi is Zuzak and Efa Shteta Indian, but of course he doesn't, God forbid, talk about the moral issues as a reason. He talks about the anti-Semitism. But Godla Machtio, Yosem and Hargo, what's worse than anti-Semitism? You can only kill a Jew in this world, but you bring Jews into licentiousness. When you have the Zidder Choiva Assemblyman Eichenstein with the Langer Dekisha voting for abortion bills and voting for Mishkav Zacha bills, as we'll report later on, that's killing the morality of people. And by the way, he's our Shliach Tzibur. When Eichenstein votes, don't say, politics, it doesn't have anything to do with me. Brothers and sisters, it has plenty to do with you. With the Shasek, if you're quiet and you don't call up Eichenstein and complain, you don't call up Aguda, you don't run into the Bababa, whether it's 45 or 48 or 56, Hike, or the Satmara, or the whole pack of them, the Domino rabbis, and you don't go and get them to control this younger manshik who's making such a chil Hashem. I told you so, and I'm going to keep on telling you every vote that Eichenstein does, because it's a new law. When a guy with pays not board, and he says that Aburim should speak out, he only has to vote right. He's already voted 5 or 6 bad votes. It's getting worse and worse. And the Jewish press that until recently was publishing names, and now they're not publishing names, the Jewish press that I like and that I'm supporting, but I'm an equal opportunity complimenter and abuser because I'm straight. Nobody could buy me. I say it like it is. The Jewish press is doing gewaldig in a lot of the things, but in some things, this new policy that they're not going to mention the names of the religious, this is bringing us down. And since the Jewish press was on a madrega, for months they were mentioning names, and now somebody got to them, and they're not mentioning names, so they're emboldening all the politicians, irreligious or especially religious, who are voting for bad stuff, and they're acting as our emissaries, as our shlichim, so that we bear responsibility halachically. That's what the Kasher Barav told us in his Poshet. There are elected officials, And the Gemara says, if you're not protesting, it's a sign you're acknowledging. Nichel Hashem is constant. So the Ziditchoiva Einikel is going to come up to the Shemaim after 120 years and they're going to sell him Simcha. It's nicht Simchadik, it's nicht Feigeldik. You brought bad news, not only on what you voted, but so many people are suffering now after 120 years because they didn't protest. Even as they saw the evolving culture, they saw the molestations, as they say in Williamsburg. We in America call it molestations. They call it molestations. So in the molestations, everything else, where does it come from? The Gezeirus against Mila. It comes from because we're showing God we don't care about your side. I'll repeat the same thing over and over for all the new people who are joining. Please spread the word. So the point is, the Jewish press is 90% there. They publicize Dr. Rosenberg's letter, but the only thing is they're missing the forest through the trees. It's because of their morality. You want to do it for anti-Semitism? Okay. But where's the morality? Here's a Zakin, Dr. Rosenberg, and a Versteckliche Indian. And the Jewish press understands a little because they put in articles about the evolving culture. But they're chickening out now. And each one of them, from the administration and from the mishpacha, since they showed God in the Klal Yisrael, they could do it by stepping back. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. You don't go back in Ruchnius. What did Rabbi say? In that same page in the Jewish press this week, on page 97, I think it is, or 87, or whatever it is, there's an editorial. And the editorial speaks about the Democrat liberals' resistance. And they say all kinds of things about immigration, and they speak about the negative Democrats. A whole big thing. Who wrote this? Aaron Rapsum Kopla? Who wrote this? And they couldn't spend a little ink writing that this very week, I think his name is Rabbi Rafal Fuchs. I think he might be a son-in-law of one of the owners of the Jewish press. He's a Talmudic scholar. He writes an article lambasting the Democratic Senate, the United States Senate. 44 people voted against the bill that would have stopped the murder, the benign murder that a baby could be born from a botched abortion, and you're allowed to withhold medical treatment. It's mamash v'tzicha. Why isn't this in the Jewish press editorial when they're writing a whole thing in the same issue? They're writing a whole thing about how bad the Democrats are with immigration, and anti-Semitism, or whatever it is. Where's the seichel? Rabbi say everything in Yiddishkeit, everything is responsibility. When I have a radio program, so I have a more responsibility to cry out and to set the record straight. When Yated and Hamadia ignore things, they have a responsibility. They're going to have to give it in b'cheshbon. I'm not saying chas v'shalom. You're not supposed to say people should give it in b'cheshbon, because then you're also calling on yourself in b'cheshbon. I'm not saying that. I'm saying like every week I'm holding up a cup in front of the video screen for those who watch this on YouTube, and our programs are archived each and every week. My YouTube channel is Levin, L-E-V-I-N, the number 11, and you can see 40 or 50 archived programs. And you can go to Gift of Photos, and he archived many of my programs before I started doing it myself. Here's my first l'chaim. I already made the bracha before the program. Rabbi said, I'm explaining to you. Each one of us has an ability. Some can influence our wives and children. Some can influence our block, our shul, our neighborhood. Each one has an achrayus. And if you showed Hashem, you can. And then you back off, it's bad news. Who's going to tell you that? You're going to hear that in an Agudah Drasha? Is your Rav and Shul going to tell you that? Listen to this letter to the editor on page 86, maybe it is. It's 86. From this issue. Read before you vote. He says, today's crop of congressmen have much to learn from the late Republican Senator James McClure. During his 18 years, he never voted for a bill he didn't read through. He said, I'd like to know, did Democrats take a speed reading course? How do they read the 1,000 page of the latest spending bill that received only hours before passing? He says, I propose there should be a regulation 7 days from the time a bill is proposed to give the Congress and legislators, this applies equally in New York City and New York State, to read it. When I told this to Eichstein, do not vote for any bill. No, I can't do that. I'll try my best, but I can't. They come in fast and furious. When in doubt, do without. A person who takes his Bekesh, his Payas, his Chasidis, his heritage, his progenitors seriously, his Yerushalayim, How can you vote? And I'm going to show you that Eichmann has voted repeatedly for terrible, terrible bills. He's only there for less than 2 months. Ashreck up the belt. And the Jewish press and the Yated Mohammediyah, they're letting him get away with it. In this week's article on the culture wars, called Dispatch from the Culture War Front, U.S. launches effort to decriminalize sodomy around the world. It's an active thing from Trump. I started to speak about it last week. Actively. That in every one of the 70 countries that still criminalizes mishkav zacha behavior, we have to make them all come down to bring a mabel into the world and to do the Maisa Amalek. Terrible. They're representing us. We're part of the community. So what can we do? Who's the makin? We don't have time for this. So the answer is very simple. Agudas Yisrael and RCA and the OU and the Young Israel and the CJF, the Center of the Coalition for Jewish Values, Rabbi Pesach Lerner, formerly of the Young Israel, and Rabbi Menken, and Rabbi Jeff Adlerstein, and Rabbi Avram Gorma, and many others that have started this organization. They should be the tail that wags the dog. Make an appointment today, tomorrow, tonight, with Vice President Pence, and say, Vice President, you're an evangelical. Your wife got a lot of flack because she's teaching in a school that respects marriage. And we stood up for you. We, the CJV, we supported you. Agudas Yisrael, they didn't support her. They should have supported her. They can still support. Go meet with Vice President Mrs. Pence and say, please, Trump doesn't understand for political reasons. The evangelicals are going to vote against him because we're going to have to go and tell our Orthodox Jews, our devout Catholics, who are in the middle of a civil war, but there's many religious ones who are traditionalists, believe in multi-gender marriage. In other words, the opposite gender marriage. You're going to lose the election. If Trump hears this, we can stop this. Is Aguda doing it? Are they going to have to give a din v'cheshbon for not doing it? What's the difference between the Torah Dika, Aguda bureaucrats and their domino rabbonim and the Ingarda Shabbalabos? What is the with politics? So on a higher level, the rat that starts on the top, we have to tell the vice president, we have to do, no. All we have to do is geld pay yeshivas and meisters, right? And we'll do token things on morality, much too late and too little. That's why gay marriage passed in New York State, because Aguda cut a deal, and they were told by the thug, Cuomo, take your money that Patterson started with TAP for yeshivas high schools, which I don't even know how much it helped the parents of the yeshiva students. It helped the yeshivas, I'm sure, the TAP grants. I don't know how much it helped the parents reduce their tuitions. I really don't know. I wish there would be a study on that, because the more government money you get to the yeshivas, it's never enough, and it really doesn't ameliorate the tuition situation with the parents. It just means you'll get $2,000 tax credits. You'll be able to pay $2,000 more tuition. Mark my words. This whole thing is a bluffery, okay? But that's the main thing that they're busy with, and therefore they're not going to chepper the politicians too much. That's why we had a shanda. We had a shanda, and I want to tell you the title of this. The title of this week's program is "Hooray, ULRICH lost, Gewaldig." I'm so happy ULRICH lost. You know why? Because the Meir Dikachil Hashem, which I spoke about last week, you want to send a message by voting for a public advocate who says, I'll help yeshivas. First of all, 5 or 10 people said they'll help yeshivas out of the 17. Second of all, what and how much will they help? And third of all, Cuomo sitted in his hoisen because you're voting for ULRICH. But the worst thing is, in front of Hashem, Hashem says, you're going to help me. What's the biggest problem with yeshivas? That they're going to have 7 hours a day curriculum English? They've already knocked that out of the box. That's not going to be the problem. And the regular yeshivas that can show on the standard tests and the regents and everything else that they're decent, they are not going to have a problem that the state is going to be able to come in and dictate stam they should do more hours when they can show we're doing much better than the average public school students, okay? So that's not going to be the problem. So, Levin, what is the problem? The problem is, even though Rav Yankel Bender, who's supposed to be one of the lead Rosh Yeshivas, who wrote an op-ed piece in the Albany Times, he said in passing for the half a sentence or two, they want to teach that we should teach immoral lifestyles, respect and tolerance. So the biggest problem, again, is not the hours, it's not the content. The biggest problem for most yeshivas is the immorality. So how are we going to fight that biggest problem that far outstrips all the other elements of the problem? By voting for ULRICH, who supports immorality. He just voted, like Chaim Deutsch did, for a bill in the city council that's called the Reproductive Non-Discrimination Act that specifically says you can't discriminate against a person for any health reproductive choices they make, which includes to abort a baby, which means that Chaim Deutsch and the tzaddik ULRICH voted that if a yeshiva hires a lady and she gets an abortion, they can't fire her in English because of this law. So yay! So you think I'm sad that we didn't send a message with ULRICH? We showed that we're prostitutes. We showed that we're harlots. We showed that we're whores. We showed Esnan Zoyna. Hashem needs us to fight for his morality by compromising with ULRICH. If we can compromise with ULRICH, who's one of the worst, and he's a bigger chil Hashem because he's a Republican, so-called conservative who does all the schmutz. So then how can we ever come to any politicians? They all look at us and the fourth estate, the media, and they say you're a bunch of phony hypocrites. So I'm happy. And I say the domino rabbis, why? Because do you think when they had Rav Aaron Schechter sign the letter last week, you think he knew what he was signing? You think he read it? Tell me something. If Rav Aaron Schechter or Chacham Harari Rafal, David Ozeri, or any of the rest of them, all these rabbis, they would buy a house. Would they make a title search? Would they buy a house and invest in a mortgage without a title search? Of course not, because they have to protect their investment. But politics, so in other words, it's taka the tail wagging the dog, Pnei dog, Pnei Kelev. It's taka. Who's telling the Gedolim, who's telling them what to do? The Josh Melvin's the Chatzka Benz. Yeah, vote for ULRICH. This will send a message. Yeah, make phone calls and everything else. A butcher. Why don't they have Teres Hashem Machimas Pesi? And they should be wise enough to say, give us the voting records on family values. Show us how we voted for family values. How can we allow ourselves to become mooks like this? It's disgusting. Now, I told you in the Jewish press about Rabbi Raphael Fuchs. So this week's Jewish press, he has from the rabbi's desk, Rabbi Raphael Fuchs, murder is now legal in America. He does it in a beautiful way. He says, remember when they came to the Torah, they offered it to Mayav. Mayav said, it says adultery, we can't have it. They offered it to Esav, it says, we murder people, we can't have it. He says, the question is, who holds for adultery and murder? So he says, now you see in America, when the United States Senate, 44 people vote, in fact, to murder little babies, okay? Who said anything about it? Who testified on it? Who went down? Can we know exactly what Abba Cohen did? How much did he do? Did he have people flooding the switchboards to speak to the senators? This isn't the Republican Senate, you understand. It's Abusha V'cherpa. So 2 out of the 3 things were not stealing, not murdering, and no adultery. Adultery is basically, since Robert Redford starred in that movie that legalized, legitimated that you can have an adulterous affair with somebody else's wife, and since Monica Lewinsky with Clinton, and on, adultery is still on the books in New York State, but it's never enforced. And the lesbian, Deborah Glick, the lesbian assemblywoman from Greenwich Village, introduces a bill every so often to take adultery off the books because she says it's a chucha v'tflula, it's a joke, it's not enforced. We got to take adultery off the books. You understand? So 2 out of the 3 already have the ritzicha, the murder, and the adultery. You understand where we're holding? Thank you, Rabbi Raphael Fuchs. This is excellent. But the Jewish press, you should speak to your father-in-law, whoever it is. You should speak to your relatives. They should stop printing the names because we're going to all have to give a different cheshbon. People should write letters to the editor. Editor at Jewish Press, or get the email for the editor at the Jewish Press and write to the editor, send in letters, and complain, why did you stop doing the naming names? When you named the names, we had a little bit of control. They were afraid. Especially the young freshmen, the newbies like Simcha Eichenstein. Now you're telling them they have free sailing. I wouldn't want to be the Jewish press. Again, letters to the editor of the Jewish press. It's letters@jewishpress.com. Letters@jewishpress.com. You want to do a mitzvah. Every letter you send in is gold. Send in a letter, put in your name, put in your phone number, email it, or snail mail it to the Jewish press. Okay? Until now, I always say you could spend money, for your mice money if you don't have. Because it's a mystery to be bechazik, but the Jewish person is going a shtickle backwards. So I'm not saying that anymore about the mice money, but I still think it's very worthwhile, and we still hope that they can do tshuva and return to the right way. Here's another fantastic article. You will never see any of this stuff in the Eilige Yated and the newspaper that we don't have to be embarrassed to take into a house. That's their advertisement, Hamodia. Here we have to be proud of the way they whitewash Kalish in Hamodia and Yated and everything else. The kiss ups to Kalish, the maneuver lobbyist who made a massive chil Hashem. And I good in Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky, when he was informed, he said it's a bizoyan, it's a chil Hashem that Kalish embraced on the day anniversary of Roe versus Wade. He ran 2 days after getting into office as a representative in the state legislature. He ran to Planned Parenthood that performs 300,000 abortions, Bernie Ritzichas. And he went there to a celebration of Roe versus Wade. And he gave interviews to big newspapers in Chicago saying he supports homosexual marriage and he has to preserve Roe versus Wade. And he was never made to acknowledge exactly what he did wrong, to sign something, to promise nothing. He sent this stupid, half-backsided, excuse my French, but that's being polite, a letter that was instantly published in the Jewish press in the Yated and Hamodia. Okay? He's doing tshuva. He doesn't say what he's doing tshuva. Nothing. Aguda did not say one word about it. Adrabah, they told him, one of the Gedolim and Aguda told him, Gam Ze Yavar. I wonder who said Gam Ze Yavar. I'd love to know. Why doesn't it come out and explain it to us? Here's a fantastic article. You won't see anything else. That Boishnim B'Kolam were embarrassed of the modern Orthodox. Listen to this. A group wants Judaism at center of Jewish state. An interview with Chazoin founder Chaim Teitelbaum. He probably stems from the Teitelbaum family. So he says like this. He formed Chazoin. You hear? He has a vision that the Jewish race has to have, the Jewish state has to have Jewish values. Marriage, conversion, kasher, Shabbos, the sanctity of the Kosel must remain true to Jewish traditions and Jewish law. Okay, and then he says, since the family is the cornerstone of our nation, this is a Jewish family, a father, mother, and children. Normalcy, not same-gender parenting. Who ever heard of such a thing? It's all of nature. In all of nature, it doesn't exist. And then he says like this. That means no more permits for gay parades, no government recognition of same-gender couples, no granting from financial support, no more liberal lecturers or curricula in the country's public schools that contradict Torah values, no more government funding for alternative brands of Judaism, a greater share of TV time for Jewish programming, meaning Torah-dika type things if they have TV ready, and on and on. This is Moiradik. You understand? He's doing it. Remember, when the Belzer or the Hitabrut do it on TV, it's okay. When he talks about it, it's also okay. Okay? Let's not make him into a shaykhitz. But what is Hashem showing us? That we don't do it. What's the heta, the fruma, the agida, the degel, and the shas? Look who's doing it. The modern orthos, the Mizrahi people, the whatever. We have something to learn from them, Rabbi Say. Let's see. Is there anything else? Is there anything else here? Let's see. Just let's see very quickly. I just want to read you the last paragraph of Rabbi Fuchs. He says like this, given these chilling new tragic realities that we currently live in, the Medrash really is that hard to understand? Is it so far-fetched to believe that a nation would not outlaw murder? It would be, but we have just witnessed arguably the most civil nation ever to exist, failing to outlaw murder in the pursuit of showing how progressive it can be. So Rabbi Fuchs, why don't you speak to Rabbi Jerry Greenwald, Reb Jerry Greenwald, and Miss Naomi Mauer, and whoever else it is, Kulpa, Raps, whoever it is there, or Joey Aaron, whoever, they were all the Chavra, and ask them to please name names and put a little pressure on the people who are making this Ritzicha, especially when they're off from people. You understand? Okay, that's where I'm coming from. I still believe that there's a chance for them to, let me tell you, in England, new educational guidelines meet Rick's response. You see, they're going to have to teach about the Mishkav Zocha, but they might not have to teach about it until high school. And then it's a shaila. If they have to teach about it in the quote-unquote sex education chelik, they'll have to teach about it in the relationship chelik. If it's in the sex education chelik, then people could opt out of it maybe. But if it's in the relationship chelik, they can't. So it's still there. and the big kanoi there who's fighting it says all of these things are terrible because the bottom line is a slice of salami, and little by little, lot by lot, they're doing things. Wake up, rabbis, and see what's going to happen here in New York. Wake up. No, business as usual. Vote for ULRICH. Hashem will give you a knip on the bekel for voting for pro-gay, pro-schmutz, pro-abortion ULRICH. That's how we're going to get this garbage out of yeshivas. You shouldn't become like England. And nobody says anything except Yehuda Levin. So I guess if nobody says except Yehuda Levin must be crazy. No. Yehuda Levin is notel schar keneged kulam. There's a lot of schar. You know what that means? That means if there are 5 million or 4 million Jews, I think that's what it means. And 4 million Jews are supposed to do something and they don't. And 1 or 2 or 5 or a handful of Jews do it. They get schar keneged kulam, Rabbi Sai. So putting this radio program, contacting me and giving me the few $100s for a week's radio program, for a half a week's, giving me the money, I'll go straight to the radio station. You can call me and you can make it out to the station. That makes you a shutta for what we're trying to do. Right now I have $12,000 that I put on my credit card, on my credit cards, and I'm starting to pay interest on it. Rabbi says, it's choking me. I live a very modest lifestyle. I'm begging you, help me out. So I want you to understand, there's a woman named Rinat Baschedva. We interviewed Rabbi Leider 2 weeks ago, and I want to give you an update. They went, her father went, she's a girl from a Haredi background, who for whatever the reason was angry at a little rebellious to enlist in the army. She enlisted in the army. There were 2 or 3 people, including an officer and a soldier, who attempted to molestate her, you understand, to do not nice things to Gezachen to her, to such an extent that after being for many months in the army, she ran away because Pasha, she couldn't take it, and she complained to the Fasholten, the people, the accursed Rishoyim. In the army, they covered it up and did nothing about it. So she figured, you know, she has to protect herself, so she ran away. So they caught her, and they put her into solitary confinement for weeks at a time. And she recently had a trial hearing. They didn't even get into the abuse. They automatically just penalized her, even though they should have let her go because of the mental trauma and emotional suffering. No, it's not enough. They're going to show those girls. You understand? So we have to try to help Rinat Baschedva. What can we do? Did you see anything about it in Yated? No. You saw anything in Hamaydia, the respectable newspaper? No. What about those great journals, Frankfurters, Ami, and Mishpacha, who kiss up and write about all kinds of shtus and vavolim and put all kinds of lowlifes on the front pages? Did they say anything about Rinat Baschedva? No. The Jewish press wrote a little bit about her, a little bit. Kol hakavod, you understand? So, who else? What are they doing in Eretz Yisrael? Yeah, the right-wing Hasidim are making protests. I don't know how much the Mizrahi is making protests. I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing. Mayor Porish was asked to get involved, and the long and short of it is, he's telling her to go back to the army or whatever he's telling her. And then there's another guy from Degel, from one of their towns, named Moshe Lechaiva, something like that. Moshe Lechaiva, this and that. If it would be their daughter or their granddaughter, it would be a different thing. So she's being re-victimized by the Israeli hilarious Rishoyim that are keeping her in solitary and in jail and trying to break her, and by the authors in Eretz Yisrael and in America who are not doing anything. So you know what happens? Mida keneged mida. We're not doing anything about the forced drafting of women in Eretz Yisrael. Guess what happened? A judge ruled here, a local Hilaria judge in some town, a liberal garbage, was appointed by a Bush. He said it's unconstitutional to discriminate against men, that men should be in a draft and have to register for selective service, which could lead to a draft. Now you just have to register. There's no mandated draft. But in 1 minute, they can decide to make a war and there'll be a draft mandated. He said it's unconstitutional. You got to do the same thing for the ladies. So guess what? We might have a problem. This might be a giant step towards drafting women. What's Aguda doing? What's OU doing? What's RCA doing? You understand? What are they doing? This week, New York State, in one of the houses, I think in the assembly, they voted for a statewide ERA, Equal Rights Amendment. Equal Rights Amendments means you're putting women's rights, quote unquote, the civil rights of women on the same level as religion from state constitution. This is a giant step towards national ERA. And this could be tremendous sakonis in so many ways. We already have transgendered bathrooms that weirdo men can walk in and say, I feel like I'm a woman, can walk into a ladies' bathroom. That was passed. That was the gender bill that was passed. That Eichelstein voted the right way, but he refused to talk about it. He couldn't get up and explain to people in plain English, I don't want your daughter or your wife or my daughter or my grandmother to have some weirdo walking into the ladies' room with their showers in the public schools or in public accommodations, etc. He couldn't do that, Eichelstein. No, this is for the Rabbunim. I'm telling you, Rabbi, so you got to listen to this program and spread it to other people, because this is the only place you'll hear the unvarnished truth. I was set up by the Kashrut of Shem Mitzion Bahalocha, and so many other Rabbanim, Gedolei Yisrael. Rabbi Sai, please spread the word about this radio program. Spread the word about YouTube. Then this is gay ice cream. You hear there's a gay ice cream. It's called gay ice cream. It has a hechsher from the OU. You understand? Can you trust the OU if they give a hechsher and gay ice cream? You understand? Now, what happened? The lesbian who got married in Marina Del Rey, Leah Forrester, who fights on a whole Yiddishkeit and everything else, she's pushing comedy. So she pushed in Passaic, and to the eternal shame, I spoke to the top assistant to Rabbi Meir Stern. Did they do anything? No. We gave them a month, 6 weeks. They did nothing. They didn't even speak in their shuls about it. Nothing. So you know what's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if that Oisvaf Lvovitz, who has Jewish queer youth, who already set up a storefront or something, he set up a satellite location besides for Manhattan. He set it up in the 5 towns. Okay? I won't be surprised if they come to Passaic next, which you'd like to. Because Passaic has this Oisvaf, Gary Sher, who's powerful, and he votes the wrong way on things. Where was Rabbi Ron Eisman, my friend? He didn't return my phone calls. You understand? Ich hab ze alle in bod. Rabbi say, I'm too old for this garbage to watch. What's the excuse that they couldn't speak out at all, at least in their own shuls, in some way? There's not enough Torah Hashem Machkimas Pesi that they should try some way of criticizing. She's not finished. She's going on to another location now. She started off in Flatbush at Garden of Eden. And now Rabbi Moshe Scheinberg was called up, Scheineman Rabbi, the big Hanoi. All right, Scheineman, yeah. And he said, listen, we can't do anything about this, but we're putting into contracts that anybody who has a hashgacha from Kehillah Kashrus, and we're working with other kashrut organizations, they can't host these kinds of things. So in the Mekam Lahaba, it won't happen. And that's a reason why Rabbi Eisen and Rabbi Scheineman and Rabbi Geltuch and whatever their names are, the whole pack of them, all the rabbinate in Flatbush are put from getting up on Shabbos Kodesh and speaking. We're afraid of the kids. The kids know so much about schmutz with the smartphones and the internet and everything else. And you can speak about it b'lashon nikiya. You can speak about it b'lashon nikiya. But they have an excuse, Abi, not to do anything. Hashem is kvelling Rabbi Scheineman. Hashem is kvelling Rabbi Eisen. These are fine people. I shake their hands. I have respect for them. But in this area, I have the greatest respect for all these people. But this is what you have to do. At this point, you have to make a mecha against them. There's no more nice guy. We're going to keep on turning the other cheek. If these rabbanim were responsible for beating up your wife somehow, or letting other people beat up your wife and they said nothing, you'd be furious at the rabbis. They're beating up on God and on his Torah, Rabbi say. And I, for one, will not remain silent. By the way, in England, where it's getting much worse, so they came out with this new decision. It was like a partial thing. You understand? So some of the Haredi groups are already mollified. Yeah, we won't teach it in relations. We'll teach it in sex education, and we can opt out of sex education. They have all the answers. Rabbi Merwis, the Oisvarf, who finally, months after I criticized him, Rabbi Sternbuch criticized him, and then European rabbis, and finally English Haredi rabbis did some criticism. Now he came out and he congratulated, what Ofsted, what the Department of Education and the Oisvaf and anti-religious, anti-morality people in England are doing. They did. It's gewaldig, and we can teach respect and everything else. So you have an article in the Jewish media that a headmistress in one of the schools, they have a child who's quote unquote transgendering. He's a girl who feels like a boy, or a boy who feels like a girl. And she gets up, she gives a whole drush in school. We have to respect the child and show the biggest derech eretz what he's doing. Anybody who says a negative word, etc., etc. In other words, this is what we're going to do. We're going to squelch people and encourage them to turn the other cheek to weirdness, to mental disease. That's the way that's going to be happening here. It's coming to New York. Are the Rabbanim here doing anything about it? You know, Ezra Friedlander, my good friend, Ezra Maganini, he's doing this thing with Sisi. He's doing with President Sisi. And President Sisi says he's going to give $70 million to rebuild shuls, to rebuild shuls in Egypt when there were no Jews in Egypt. You understand? Oh, Das Feldman, you understand? This is what we need. And it's very nice. And he's going to come, and they're going to give a medal, and it's a nice thing. And Ezra makes parnasa from it. It's all gewaldig. It's all wonderful. But I'm just telling you, the same kishrin that Ezra has for these kinds of things. Imagine if Ezra Friedlander would use his kishrin to fight for morality, even Tilton and Hatzad, instead of making excuse for everybody and making Tu B'Shvat parties for the lesbian speaker who was running for mayor that time. You understand? So Ezra, Chelech La Raisa, like Rabbi Yochanan said to Reish Lakish, the brigand, he said, you're so strong, use it for the Torah. And when he sprang into the river, all of a sudden he got weak. That was the beginning of his return. Ezra, come back. Ach, Pritvi, Liska, come back. We need people like you with your talents to promote morality. Chaim Deutsch voted for a series of bills in the New York City Council. He did good by supporting, to a limited extent, not voting to condemn. He didn't God forbid support. He voted not to condemn Ruben Diaz and take away his taxi limousine chairmanship of that committee. And then he gave like a reason. I didn't give him a hearing, etc., etc. He was afraid to say, you know, there isn't an inordinate amount of influence of anti-family values in a state legislature and city legislature. Of course, Chaim couldn't do that. But we have to give him credit that he did what he did, because he was one of only 2 people or something like that, or maybe the only one. But what he also did in December that I found out is he voted for a bunch of reporting bills. They're reporting statistics on this chaos and that chaos, and one of the bills was the creating of an office of diversity and inclusion. They're going to have another bureaucracy that Chaim Deutsch voted for. And of course, even though it doesn't push right now, what do you think the diversity and inclusion is about? Do you think it's about Yiddelach? Yiddelach, Hafag. It's about pushing gay, transgendered, polysexual, pansexual, schmexual. That's what it's about. And once again, Chaim Deutsch is voting for it. So you understand? He still doesn't get it. The operative rule for Deutsch and everybody else, and Eichel, anything that can remotely be tied to increasing statistics, studies, the words LBDQRXP, you don't vote for it. And if you don't have the guts to vote no, at least vote absent. You behemoths for stabis, really, behemoths. You're representing me. I resent it. I'm not maskim. I'm upset about it. And I understand the spiritual impact that it has on our children, Rabbi Isai. Okay? Chaim voted for the Reproductive Non-Discrimination Act together with the Heilige Tzaddik, Eric Ulrich. By the way, Diaz voted against it. By the way, and one other person. Now, I just want to tell you, some of those reporting bills, the Mishkav Zachar reporting bills that Chaim Deutsch voted for, his cousin through marriage, the Oisref Yeager, whose wife sends out congratulatory tweets to the Mishkavei Zachar supporters, and who marched with Fernando Ferrer in a gay parade in around 2007 in Queens, when it wasn't even so popular, the big tzaddik with the Bekesha, he voted against some of the bills. Does he get a knipper from Beckel? I don't know why he voted against the bills. It could be because he's against affirmative action, or whatever the reasons is. But he was to the right of Chaim Deutsch in some of these bills. Och, and that this is where we're holding Chaim. The Assembly of the State of New York had 3 bad bills, and Simcha Eichenstein voted for all these bad bills. A state ERA bill, I don't have to explain to you. State ERA is a giant step closer to a national ERA. We're in big trouble with that. The next thing is, there's a big push for national ERA. Again, we should be doing things. What is the OU are good? What are they doing? Who are they meeting with? Who are they lobbying? In New York State, the state ERA has to pass 2 times. It's going to pass 2 times because just like the Assembly passed it, the Liberal Democrats will pass it in the Senate. Then a year from now, they'll do the same thing. And in something like 2022, it's going to be up to the people to vote for it. But the time to start talking about the ERA is now. Now to do things. The Aguda and the OU should be the tail that wags the dog. They should go to the good buddy Cardinal Dolan, who they cooperate with on fighting for tuition tax credits. And they should embarrass him at the fighting ERA and the fighting against the women's draft. And then they should go to the Southern Baptists, the evangelicals. Make a Kiddush Hashem. Oh, it doesn't have to do with geld, so we don't have to do anything. All right. So all I'll do is we'll have to be drafted. The second bill that Eichenstein voted for in the state Senate, in the state assembly, it was something to do with Roosevelt Island. But in this Roosevelt Island, it said you can't discriminate it based on sexual orientation. Again, every time Eichenstein does this, he shows all of the fourth estate, the media people, and the politicians that a guy in a Beckish can vote with something that has the word lesbian, gay, queer, this and that. Welche Dayen hast die gefragt? Who is your Pesach? Zwiebel? Felder? Who votes for Schmutz? Felder? Shame on you, Eichenstein. Shame on you. It's a burning anger because exactly what I said, that's what's happening. I told you what Greenfield would do, and he did it. And even though when he's out now, he has to tweet against Diaz. He has to tweet against Diaz when Chaim Deutsch voted for him. This is what he's busy with, Greenfield. Once a snake, always a snake. It doesn't change its skin. The third bill changes the status of getting into hospice. It used to be to get into hospice, which means that the person's going to die. To get into hospice treatment, you had to be a really life-threatening condition that it's called a person going to die. Now they changed it. It should be a life-limiting condition. A life-limiting condition is much more makel than hospice. This is going to encourage assisted suicide and devalue the sanctity of life. And the Chamor Belidas, Eichenstein voted for this also. Which Gadol said he should vote? Which Dayan said he should vote for this? It's absolutely disgusting. It's a chil Hashem ayim v'noira. By the way, there was another thing he voted for about a woman's middle name change. It's not the worst thing in the world that she can do it. It's just, but why are they doing this? What's more feminism with the middle name should be part of our legal name. Felder had to vote for this also. All of these donkeys, these chamorim, these Jewish jackasses, they get into office and they feel so guilty. They feel like when your face turns red, when you're embarrassed, the ears turn red, that they're looked at as extremists. Instead of being proud Jews, Felder and Eichenstein and Deutsch and Jaeger, they're all trying to capitulate. Look, I'm not so bad. You see, I voted for this little gay ass. I voted for this little feminism. Shame on them. That's why Dr. Frischman was right in his debate in the Jewish Observer many years ago when he debated Dr. Aaron Tversky. And Dr. Aaron Tversky was wrong. We should not have Orthodox people in office because we haven't yet found an Orthodox person like there was in Europe who was strictly La Hashem. All of them compromised. There hasn't been one, not one, that didn't compromise. Holy Man, the homosexual, Hoylman, the homosexual, had a bill for homeless youth that all the organizations that deal with homeless youth are going to have to undergo training for sensitivity to lesbian, gay, queer, transgender, transgender, and they're going to have to go through all kinds of things, how to talk to their parents, how to talk to their families, how to talk to them, how to stop bullying. In other words, if there are institutions, particularly Gentile institutions that deal with homeless youth, like Catholics, evangelical, this and that, they're going to all have to be homosexually brainwashed and with the propaganda and everything else. What kind of a business is Eichenstein voting this for? Is the Baba of a Rebbe going to have to give a din v'cheshbon? He holds himself the biggest Rebbe in Barbach, the 49, the 56, the 70. You think, hike! I couldn't kill us. The Satmar, a hike! They should all take a hike. You understand? They're building massive buildings. It's gewaldig. What are they doing about this Chil Hashem Eichenstein in their own backyard? Maybe they should make a Ziddichover convention and come down and teach them what it is. I don't care if there was 62-0, so I actually voted for it. First of all, if he's a feckless chicken chamor who doesn't have enough gulyonis, he doesn't have enough testosterone to stand up for what's right, let him be absent. Why do you have to vote for it? Manul. Thank you, Jewish press, for not mentioning Eichenstein. That's why we have this that business for. Remember, Eichenstein is our shliach, and we're going to have to give a din v'cheshbon for not controlling him, for not speaking to our rabbis. Why doesn't somebody go to Rabbi Eisenman, that very popular Rav, etc., and tell him the facts There has to be people speaking out. There has to be revolution. This is Yehuda Levin. You've been listening to our program. I'm pleading with each and every one of you. Please, become a shutef in what we're doing. Become a shutef by publicizing that we have this radio program at 11 o'clock, 11 at 11. You can go on the internet. You can come to my chat, my WhatsApp chat. You'll hear a lot more stuff. 718-469-6999. Spread the word about the YouTube. Spread the word about the hotline, Rabbi Sai. Please call up the hotline number if you can. 641-715-3900. Spread the hotline number. 641-715-3900. Extension 247656 until we meet next week again. Rabbi Sai. Your simcha could be increased if you stand up for Hashem and His Torah. It's the best insurance policy. It's the best schayra. Guten Tag mit.